Hey guys, I'm back, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the top 3 reasons why Aggregor is the worst Ben 10 villain. And before the UA fans say anything, I left up a poll asking if people wanted to see this video, and 90% of you said yes. So I am just doing what people asked for. I have no actual hatred towards UA or Aggregor. And because I don't like being too negative, let me just say that the voice actor for Aggregor was doing his absolute best to save this character. I mean, just listen to him.
Who says you're going home? I can't imagine how you managed to beat me here, Tennyson. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to kill you and take the ultimate prize.
Whatever else can be said for Aggregor, he had an amazing voice actor. And yes, I do know that he voiced a few characters in Ultimate Alien, so it does make him sound kinda samey, but I still felt like his Aggregor depiction stood out from, say, something like Ragnarok. So yeah, good work, John DiMaggio. Now on to the 3 reasons why Aggregor is the worst Ben 10 villain.
In a few minutes, I won't care.
Alright, you've probably already heard this point from other Ben 10 reviewers, so I won't stretch it too much here, but basically, Aggregor has very little actual character. He seems to lack any semblance of a personality. He's cruel, but doesn't seem to enjoy being cruel, nor does he seem indifferent to it. He wants the power of a celestial sapien, but never really delves into why that's so important to him. And since this revelation comes at the very end of his arc, it really comes across as an afterthought. Like, imagine if instead of being a baby celestial sapien, it turned out to be a baby Atomics, or a baby Nalgian. This plot really doesn't change too much, because again we don't know why Aggregor wants a celestial sapien power specifically, and why that's so important to him as a character/person. In contrast, look at when classic series Vilgax finally explains his desire for wanting the Omnitrix. He wants the Omnitrix to create a whole army of shapeshifters to take over the galaxy with, making his obsession with it throughout the classic series make a lot more sense in hindsight. But let's go back to Aggregor's lack of characterization for a moment, instead of talking about how great classic series Vilgax is. In my Malware video, I talked about how Malware as a character seemed to be driven by his insecurities and inadequacies, brought on by the fact that he was deemed an inferior mechamorph by Azimuth, his creator and essentially father. So him lashing out in anger and hurting his own kind makes sense. Similarly, Kevin was raised on the streets of New York and was ostracized due to his unique powers, being labeled a freak by the other kids and being picked on because of that. So it makes sense why he grows up to hate the world and tries to lash out at it any chance he can get. Aggregor, on the other hand, doesn't really have this. We don't ever get a backstory on why he's like this, and his dialogue is mostly just him expositing his plans out to the audience. The only slightly character-defining dialogue is when he talks about how his people's laws are made for the weak to follow, and this is the only time we get to see any attempt at characterizing him, and it's not really a good one in my opinion, as we don't even know anything about his people, so this just comes across as Aggregor hates his people's laws because he's a bad guy and nothing else. But why is all this such a problem? Couldn't Aggregor just have been an antagonistic force and less of a person himself? More akin to a force of nature that was desperately trying to get even stronger/more powerful, like say Majin Buu from Dragon Ball Z? Maybe, but this brings us to our second reason why Aggregor is such a bad villain, his lack of connection with the main characters.
And now, the ultimate power is mine.
Imagine for a moment that it wasn't Ben, Gwen, and Kevin trying to stop Aggregor from taking over the universe. Imagine if it was like Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman, or any other trio of heroes. Nothing really changes here, because the main trio didn't learn some kind of moral lesson from going after Aggregor, nor did they have to go through some sort of character arc or journey due to what Aggregor was doing in this arc. As people, they all pretty much stayed exactly the same after this arc, so if you replace the main trio with any other set of heroes, pretty much nothing would change here. And before you say, oh, well Kevin wouldn't have been forced to turn evil here by absorbing the Ultimatrix to stop Aggregor from getting the Celestial Sapien, yes, but the reason why Kevin turned evil wasn't really due to a character flaw or character arc/development. It was literally just, oh, Aggregor's about to win, I need more power, time to absorb the Ultimatrix. This could have happened with any villain, Vilgax, Ghost Freak, Darkstar, anyone. So replacing the main trio still doesn't change that much. That's a bit of a tangent. Basically, we can replace the main trio because of their lack of connection with Aggregor, both as a villain and just on a character-to-character interaction level. Take Ben for example. Ben and Aggregor really don't have any connection. They don't really know each other, nor has Aggregor really personally wronged Ben in any way, causing there to be some sort of connection. He's more or less been doing his own thing. The only real loose connection the writers were able to put together with these characters is the fact that Aggregor absorbed/killed aliens that the main trio knew, which is a very weak and tenuous connection. And it isn't helped that this connection almost never gets brought up during this arc. Like, it's to the point where I was actually surprised to see them again at the end of the Ultimate Kevin arc, because none of the main trio ever mention them after they're absorbed by Aggregor. Let's compare Aggregor to Ghost Freak, a villain that is closely connected to Ben, as he was literally a transformation inside Ben's watch, and hates Ben with a passion for inadvertently controlling him all this time, and tries to get revenge on Ben by merging with him and controlling his body like a puppet. This is what I mean by a connection with the main characters, as on paper, Ghost Freak doesn't really have much of a motivation on his own, besides power, but this connection with Ben heightens his character, and his desire for revenge. Here, maybe this will be a better way to explain what I mean here. Have you ever heard the phrase, "a hero is only as good as his villain"? It's a pretty commonly used phrase when talking about writing, and what it basically means is that a main character or hero is only as good as the trials they go through, or villains that they face, and what those villains force them to learn about themselves. Take for instance, the Joker. He's a foil to Batman. Where Batman is calm and orderly, the Joker is crazy and chaotic. Where Batman tries to predict how criminals think, the Joker just straight up doesn't think and just does crazy psychotic things in order to put Batman off his game. The Joker tests Batman, creating a kind of personal connection between the two characters. Aggregor just doesn't have this with Ben. He doesn't test Ben as a character, or test his character traits, or makes him learn or develop in a unique way. Hell, he's not even something like the Green Goblin, who personally knows Peter Parker and his true identity. Aggregor knows next to nothing about Ben, doesn't care to learn anything about Ben, and this doesn't help Ben grow or develop in any way. Why is this all so important, I hear you asking? Well, it goes back to what I talked about earlier. Aggregor already has so little going for him as a character, so the fact that he lacks a personal connection with Ben in any meaningful way only makes him that much worse as a villain, because basically it just means he's some guy doing some bad things. And that's usually how I feel about Aggregor anytime I see him on screen. He's just some dude who just wanders in at the end of episodes and is like, "Oh, I've gotten the next piece to the map of infinity. Haha, Ben Tennyson, try and stop me now." There's very little depth between their interactions or Aggregor as a character, and that's my main point I've been trying to hammer home in this section. That Aggregor has very little characterization, and he is a character that desperately needs it because of his lack of connection with the main cast, and because he lacks either of these two things, he truly comes across as one of the worst villains ever put to screen in Ben 10. And with that out of the way, we can move on to my third reason why Aggregor is such a bad villain: showing versus telling.
When Osmosians absorb the energy of other life forms, we only gain 1/10 of that creature's abilities.
But first, let's talk about one of the characters the writers tried to make Aggregor have a connection with, Kevin. The writers tried to imply a connection between these two because they were both of the same species, that species being Osmosian. So why didn't I talk about this in the last section? Well, it's because the writers don't really do a good job of showing us, the audience, this connection. Instead, they try to tell us there's supposed to be one. Here, let me show you what I mean.
Aggregor is an Osmosian like me. Maybe I just feel responsible.
See, this is the problem with this scene. The writers are trying to outright tell us how Kevin feels about Aggregor, and what's worse is that Kevin hasn't even met Aggregor yet. He's only heard stories about Aggregor from other characters, none of whom even like Aggregor, and all of whom's stories make him out to be a horrible person. So the writers flimsily try to come up with a reason as to why Kevin should even care about Aggregor, and that reason being is that they're literally the same species. There is a better moment later on in this episode, so don't think I'm just trying to blindly hate on it. The reason why I bring this scene up is because it's a prime example of the writers telling us how to feel about Aggregor instead of showing us how to feel about him. And how do I know this? Well, other than the fact that this connection between Kevin and Aggregor doesn't get brought up again until the Forge of Creation, Aggregor's last episode in his arc, this showing versus telling problem is apparent all throughout the Map of Infinity saga. I think what caused it is the fact that Aggregor really doesn't have much screen time. Like, besides the episode where I just pulled that Kevin clip from, and his final episode in the Forge of Creation, Aggregor usually kinda just becomes a cameo at the end of episodes, teasing his eventual fight with the Tennysons. So instead of being allowed to see how evil Aggregor is, we are instead told how evil he is from other characters that know him, like the Andromeda 5, and later on, Azimuth himself, when he starts talking about how dangerous Aggregor will be when he gets all the map pieces to lead him to the Forge of Creation. And why is this a problem, I hear some of you asking? Well, to answer that, let's go back one more time to when I talked about Aggregor being less of a character and more of an antagonistic force, like Majin Buu from Dragon Ball Z. The reason why Aggregor isn't like this and can be like this is because 1, he lacks that personal connection with the main characters that I talked about, so they don't really learn or grow from this encounter with Aggregor, unlike how the Z fighters learn from their encounter with Majin Buu as that arc continues. And 2, it stops Aggregor from ever feeling like a true threat. Here, maybe this next comparison will help illuminate my point. Do you guys remember that werewolf from the classic series episode Benwolf? That werewolf didn't really have much of a personal connection to the Tennysons, nor did that werewolf really seem to have much of a good characterization, as we never really got to know him. So why is he a better villain than Aggregor? Well, 1 is the fact that he just wasn't used as much, so we couldn't really grow tired of his lack of characterization. He was literally a one-off villain, unlike Aggregor. But 2, and more importantly here, is that we were shown how deadly of a threat he was. The characters never just sat around talking about how dangerous the Analdushi was, nor did we have some other character come down and tell us how dangerous it could be. The closest we get to that is when one of the characters talks about how the werewolf is actually a Yanaldushi and its origins, and the only reason that's even interesting / intriguing is because we've seen just how dangerous of a threat this werewolf already is, so learning that it could get worse really puts you at the edge of your seat, a feeling that only heightens towards the end of the Benwolf episode, where the werewolf traps Ben in a smoldering volcano about to erupt, once again showing us how dangerous of a threat the werewolf is. To wrap this all up, think of us, the audience, as young Ben in the Forge of Creation episode, and the writers as the main trio themselves, trying to tell us about how dangerous Aggregor is and how high stakes the main plot has become, but never really showing us. This lack of being able to show us how dangerous Aggregor is an objective flaw in my opinion. As in visual storytelling, you need to be able to do this, as it's the only real way to convey to the audience what you're trying to do with this character and this story. And just to clarify, those little snippets of Aggregor coming in at the end and taking the Map of Infinity aren't really showing us he's a threat, as we don't even learn what the Map of Infinity is till the very end of the arc. We're just going off the fact that Azimuth tells us it's a problem, and other characters tell us how powerful those map pieces are. We're not really shown that. So to sum up, Aggregor's lack of connection with the main characters, coupled with his lack of interesting characterization, and the fact that the writers have the tendency to tell us how dangerous he is instead of showing us how dangerous he is, all kinda combined to make him the worst Ben 10 villain in the entire series. And with that, this has been the 3 reasons why Aggregor is the worst Ben 10 villain. But what did you guys think of Aggregor? Leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. And make sure to subscribe if you're new, since I plan to use the community post tab a lot more, and occasionally post polls about my video ideas. So if that sounds interesting to you, subscribe and check it out. Thanks so much for putting me over 100 subs, guys. Was gonna post about it, but figured talking about it in a video would make more sense. I appreciate all the love and support you guys have shown me, and I hope to see you all again real soon.